You know where there's some great skiing right now? Horseshoe Valley, Blue Mountain, Ontario, because they're getting fresh snow still in Toronto. Let's go there now to our weather correspondent, TSN's Frank Corrado. Have you been shoveling madly here in the month of April? Don't give me those side eyes. I know there's snow in Toronto.
Let me just tell you something, okay? It snowed here yesterday. It snowed in Montreal where I was yesterday. And not one single person wanted that snow. Everyone was pissed off. It was snowing sideways yesterday. And luckily it melted. But so last year we did, I think we did our last Habs game, Brian Mudryk and I, April 8th or 9th or 10th. And we walked to the rink in nothing but like our suit, our backpack, sunny day, nice out. And we looked at each other and we said, we're golfing pretty soon. And then yesterday, same game, last one of the year for us, it's April 8th. We looked at each other and we said, we're not golfing soon. This sucks. Yeah.
Such is life. Out of those climbs.
Well, you made your bed, now lie in it. Okay.
Yes.
What'd you make of the cardiac Canucks last night?
What was that?
Are
we ever going to witness anything like that again? Where like the game's over. You would have to think the game's over. And even when the first one of the three goes in, you're like, well, this game's still over. Like it's Dallas too. And that's the thing. Like it wasn't Chicago, it wasn't Nashville, it wasn't San Jose. It was the Dallas Stars, who are known for being, a stout, responsible defensive team, can lock it down. That was wild. Like it was crazy watching that back. I don't know how you guys felt, but when I was doing the game in Montreal, and then you're reading tweets and you're seeing things, and you're like, wait a second, what is going on over there? And then I was in shock watching it all back. Couldn't believe that happened.
I had an eerie feeling that at 5-4 they might tie it. I had a friend text me this morning going, what the hell did I miss last night? How did that happen? And I said, really, winning faceoffs, gaining the zone, strong 6-on-5 puck movement, a little bit fluky, throwing one at the net on the final goal. But for the most part, was kind of textbook 6-on-5 play, Frank.
Yeah. No, that's what it is. And like you don't have some players that you would normally like to have, and so Pius Suter continues his strong point production. That gets highlighted in that whole thing. And then, of course, you win the game in overtime. But you're right, 6-on-5 play, what does it take? You win a face-off, you extend some offensive zone possession, and then you find ways to utilize the guy that isn't covered. And that's, it's crazy that it happened, though, at a point where the game isn't going to matter. I think that's... It's a crappy takeaway. Like when it's all said and done, it's like that would have been so amazing if they were, hanging on to a spot or a point out, or it was within reach, and it just, it doesn't have that same electricity, even though it was an unbelievable comeback.
Yeah, if it's 10 days ago, if it's 10 days ago, it's a massive win. It does preserve the drama.
So you're not seeing the storyline here, Frank, of Macklin Celebrini doing his Vancouver Canucks, his hometown Canucks, a favor tonight and beating the Wild. The Canucks going into Denver and winning. The Canucks beating the Minnesota Wild on Saturday here on home ice. And then Minnesota feeling the crushing pressure, trying to integrate two somewhat hurt players in Kaprizov and Eriksson and choking under the pressure, much like Marcus Naslund Canucks teams of the past.
Oh, man.
Vancouver going to the playoffs. You're not seeing that storyline.
So you're telling me that all of that stuff is the 0.2% chance that Money Puck has the Canucks with making the playoffs. That is the point two. All those things happening. Yeah,
that is the route. That is the vision. I'm stunned you can't share that, actually.
Yeah. What we saw is the result of a bunch of young players in the lineup still trying to prove themselves. Like the AHL guys in this lineup are never say die. And I think it also helps that you've got role players on career years. Like Sherwood doesn't want to stop scoring. Like he probably doesn't want the season to end. He's having a ball. Pius Suter's having the time of his life. All of these guys on season long heaters, and the AHL guys given all this plum experience. that's adding to the we're not quitting here, isn't it?
Yeah. There are guys that have things to play for sure. Like not everyone falls into the same category. Like a guy like Pius Suter, his value continues to go up because of his consistent production, and it was fairly consistent before he even got to Vancouver. It has continued. I think of a guy like Mancini who scores last night. Like these are good reps for him, regardless of what you think of the games. Like like Matt pointed out, technically you are still in the fight. But I think anytime you're a young guy trying to establish yourself in the league, like you're fighting a fight for yourself. And ultimately, in the long run, you hope you help the team and stick around for a long time. Like Ratu, same situation. Like you need to finish the season, putting everyone kind of on notice that like I'm ready to be here all the time. Because in training camp with Ratu, there were times when I see him and I'm like, that looks like an NHL player. But you get into the rigors of the season and it's like you got to be consistent and you have to produce and like you have to bring something to the table that makes it your job and no one can take it from you at that given moment. So everyone's starting fresh next year, but it's nice to establish these types of things. Everyone's playing for something, and Sherwood's a good one because like that's a guy who, when he was signed, like flew under the radar of DeBrusk and maybe even Heinen, and the trees that they brought in on defense. But that's a guy that's been unbelievable for them. The hits, the goal production, the energy that he brings. Like, yeah, there's another guy that probably doesn't want the season to end because everything's going well for him. But it's a good year. Turn it into next year as well. And I think that's what some of these guys are playing for. Actually, I know that's what some of these guys are playing for.
Canucks can't get fooled into thinking Pius Suter is their second line center, right? I mean,
no.
Great season, but as they look, we've been talking about getting this center. They've got Hedl and Suter. They can't just think, maybe this works as long as Pettersson bounces back. That's not the plan, is it?
No. If Suter's the second line center, it's likely because they struck out on other stuff, whether it's like signing guys or making a trade, and they said, well, we can make it work. It's not ideal, and we're just going to have to go with this for now. He's best suited, I would think, to be like your third line center or a swing winger, right? Like, we need someone to play in the top six wing. Suter can do it, but we need him to be a third line center. He can do it. Like I think in a perfect world, you don't have him on a fourth line. You have some bigger bodies, some physical guys, like a little more tailor made for that type of role. But like that's where I see him. If he's a second line center next year, and like it could be the case. There's not a lot of quality centermen out there. Like it's going to be hard. What's John Tavares going to do? What's Sam Bennett going to do? What's Pius Suter going to do? Like you go down the list and it's like, I don't know. There's a lot of guys that you think might go back to their teams, might command a ton of money. So it's going to be interesting to see how the center market plays out. But if he is the second line center, it's likely temporary, not a permanent solution.
You know Tavares at all, personally?
I skated with him a bit when I was playing. Like we used to do this thing called the Dungeon Cup back in Toronto, where it was like a once a week game, that like a 7-game series or something in the summer.
Yeah. Do you I know he didn't wear their jammies growing up, but could you see him signing with the Canucks?
I think he really loves Toronto. Like I think he came home, and he has been.
Are the Leafs going to re-sign? Like, do you think there's a world?
I think there's a world where Toronto would re-sign him, especially if the price fits, what they would need. Listen, he's had an unbelievable year. Like no one has had more goals in the NHL since the Four Nations break than him, or he's in the top 3. It's something like that. Like he's aged quite well. And I know it's a big ticket he's on. It's like an $11 million ticket, but he probably has given you very close to that kind of production for the entirety of that contract. It hasn't aged, so he's got some game left. The thing with Toronto...
He's a point-per-game player this year.
Yeah, the thing with Tavares in Toronto is this. I don't think it's necessarily about, John Tavares in a vacuum being a Toronto Maple Leafs wanting to have him back. I think it's more of a question of, can this core win? And if they can't, how do we justify bringing everyone back, regardless of how well they play in the regular season? So Tavares falls into that category with Mitch Marner. And if you're not going to re-sign one of them, then the other one likely comes back. If you're re-signing both of them, it's because you had some playoff success and you're like,
Gotcha.
it finally started to work. So that's where, like, I think things still have to play out with Tavares in Toronto to ultimately know. But I mean, Canadian market is like Vancouver. Canadian market, passionate about hockey, excellent city to live in. Team gets treated really well. Like there's a lot of nice things about being a Canuck. It's just, I guess he's always played in New York or Toronto. All of a sudden now you're on the plane a lot longer than you used to be, a lot later in your career. Is that something that you want? And do you want to move your family to a 3-hour different time zone? I think those are factors.
At age 34, 35, 36, and of course taxes. And we know John's had his
well, taxes are more in Ontario. I think we're more. We're like 2% more.
Really?
Yeah, we're
wow.
We're like 52 when it's all said and done. I think Quebec it gets up to 54. I think you guys are slightly less in that tax bracket.
Yeah, and we know Mr. Tavares has had his disagreements with the CRA in the past.
Hey, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Well,
we won't air that part.
that's a very dangerous area of life to be cheating, let me tell you. We saw Duchesne last night. Boy, he can still skate. 79, still point per game player.
Still loves to score. Did you see that celebration?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much do you think he's got left?
I think Matt Duchene's got game left. I think he falls into the, I want to go somewhere where I can win and not necessarily have to be the guy, but just be part of the machine. And I think that's why it works well for him in Dallas better than it has worked for him elsewhere. Because he's not the centerpiece, he's not the go-to guy, but when you surround him with, the Wyatt Johnstons and the Robertsons and the Rope Hintzes of the world, when you surround him, Jamie Benn, like when you surround him with all those guys, all of a sudden his game rises up and you get the effect of him being like the go-to guy. But he doesn't have to be per se. I think Matt Duchene still skates incredibly well, still shifty, dynamic, great hands, like can shoot the puck. He's got so many tools and he's had them for such a long time. There's just always been this thing about Duchene where it's like wherever he goes, that team, is either was winning and then isn't winning or doesn't get over the hump. And now he's in a situation in Dallas where, like, I would imagine he wants to squash that and be like, I can play on a team that wins and I want to win. And he's taken much less money to stay in Dallas and be a part of that. So I think with that being said and seeing how that's played out, I think the number one thing he looks at is, well, I don't know how much longer is left on his buyout. I think he's still getting money from Nashville. So he probably looks at it and says, just give me a situation where I can win and I can get made whole with my old contract. Not looking to break the bank, but I want to be a winner. And he would have to evaluate if Vancouver gives him that chance.
That Stars forward set is ridiculous. Dadonov on the fourth line, Ben on the third line, and this is all with Sagan still coming back here. He's going to be back any day now. I mean, they have got 10 legit forwards on any given night.
Yeah, that's as deep of a roster as I can think of in the league. And watching Dallas play in the playoffs, they're a good team, but they need to have like that little bit of extra star power kind of help them out. And I think Ottinger falls into that, where like Ottinger has to put together, a series or multiple series like the one where he had against the Flames a few years back, where he was unbelievable in that Game 7. But yeah, like there's no doubt there's a ton of talent there, especially up front. I think there would be a little bit of concern on the back end, maybe on the right side. With Dumba, Ceci, and Lyubushkin, like none of those guys really scream. Well, they're not top pair guys. They could all pinch hit on a second pair, and are good third pair guys, like very good third pair guys. They're somewhere in the middle of like that 2-3. So that would be the area of concern for Dallas, but that's as deep of a roster as any. And we talked about Matt Duchene. and being that guy that, wants to win and needs to get over the hump of winning, I think Pete DeBoer is right there as well. Like, he's been a coach that consistently goes far in the playoffs, has been playing for a Stanley Cup and hasn't been able to win. So as much as, Duchesne would like to be categorized as a champion, I think Pete DeBoer is right there as well to finally win one.
Yeah, I picked them last year. I sort of want to pick them again, but Heiskanen, like, you've got to have him, and he's got to be going.
They're still saying he might be around for the first round.
No, I know.
Yeah, they're kind of dangling it a little bit,
Yeah.
although it wasn't. I think at one point it was more definitive, like, oh yeah, we're going to have Heiskanen back.
That's
and then
right.
it turned
That's
into,
right.
well, we're hoping we're going to have Heiskanen back.
Time ticks on by quickly.
Do we have? We haven't asked them the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, have we? On Pius Suter, because and we should have when we were talking about Suter, but AFP Analytics had him on a 4x3.9 earlier in the season, Frank. And all he's done since then is masquerade as a first line center. 11 points his last 8 games, up to 24 goals on the season. So we're building in the increase. $5 million on a 4 or 5 year deal. You doing that if you're the Canucks?
I probably am, just because I need a centerman. Like, I badly need centerman. So if I don't do it, what else is out there for me? And I think so. I'm trying to think. Like, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins makes just over $5 million. It's over $5 million, and he's on a long-term deal. But Nugent-Hopkins, I think, has 20 goals this year. Like, he's at 49 points. Actually, just pulled it up. He's at 20 goals. He's at 49 points. So he said Suter's at 24 goals. Like, I think if you look at it that way, you can justify it. And you'll always have the baked in, cap going up, more money available, percentage of the cap. But I think if you look at it like, we need a centerman, we have to pay this guy. We know it works with our head coach, which is something that should be important and valuable to the team. I would have no problem handing that over to him. The other thing, it's not that he just had a 1-year anomaly year. He's been right around, like, this is obviously his best, but he's been consistent. Like, he didn't jump up a crazy amount this year. So you know what you're getting with him.
No, he had 14 goals in 67 games last year, going back to his rookie season, 14 and 55. He's been on this pace before.
Right. Guys, I think you can argue that he's got more opportunity, and so he has built off his baseline numbers because of that opportunity.
And if this is the ceiling,
Frank,
Frank,
simple equation on him.
If he sinks back to 18 goals, 40 points at $5 million, in 2 years' time, that for your third-line center, that's not overpaying.
I think $5 million for a third-line center is not an outrageous ask.
Especially when he's a primary and effective penalty killer, which he has been all season long.
And can be on your
Vancouver.
PP2 even, too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have no, like, centermen are one of those positions where if I'm getting a quality centerman, and define quality, someone that brings something to the table, right? Like, you talked about penalty killing, like ability to score goals, trustworthy guy. So, he's bringing quality to the table. I think I'm okay with giving a centerman a little extra money. I'm okay with giving certain defensemen a little more money, because worst case scenario, I can still squeeze 22, 25 minutes out of him and get, like the Darnell Nurse one always comes up, right? Like $9 million. Okay, worst case scenario, Darnell Nurse gives you 23 minutes. And, as long as he doesn't cough it up, you're like, I can kind of justify, like, you can hide the money better when it's positions like that. I probably don't want to overpay for a third-line winger, though. Fourth-line winger, fourth-line center.
But that's not this guy. And look, I wish he skated better. I wish he won more face-offs. But you can almost say he's a all-situations light player, because he can play center, he can play the wing, he kills penalties. As Blake says, he's a power play 2 guy. You can use him protecting a lead late. So, that... You got to look beyond the numbers and beyond the career season, I think, when you're evaluating in this marketplace.
I got to pull
not to have
something
the
up.
fifth year. But.
I got to pull something up. I want to see the face-off percentage, 42.2.
It's terrible. It's
okay,
terrible.
so I was just about to make the argument that, like, I think face-off percentage is an overrated stat.
Probably.
And I do think it is, because Like the difference between 46 to like 49 is, what is that? Like 2 faceoffs in a game? I don't know. That could be like a neutral zone draw and some other draw. I think when it comes to faceoffs, if you win the important one at the right time, like that's really what matters most. But at 42, I can't protect him. 42, I need that to be like 46, 45.
It has been in the
up.
past.
Well, he was
been in the
49
past.
last year. 49 last year.
He's never been a particularly good face-off guy, but he's passable.
He's been palatable before.
And
He could
frankly,
probably
I'd
get
like
back
to
there.
see the breakdown on his strong side, what he looks like, because, if you do have the appropriate handedness at center, then you can shelter some of that. Frank, marvelous stuff. Appreciate this. Look forward to next week already.
All right, boys. Have a good one.